On a quiet summer morning in 1908, the sky over Siberia suddenly lit up not with sunlight, but with something far more terrifying. A blazing fireball streaked across the sky, so bright that people hundreds of miles away thought the sun had risen twice. Moments later, the earth shook. Trees snapped like matchsticks. A thunderous boom echoed across the land. But when the smoke cleared, there was no crater, no meteorite, no obvious culprit at all, just flattened forest and a whole lot of questions. What exactly happened that day remains one of the strangest, unsolved puzzles in modern science. We're talking about the Tunguska Event, an explosion so massive it could have wiped out a major city. Yet it happened in the middle of nowhere, left no impact crater, and to this day, no solid evidence of what caused it. And this wasn't just any random boom in the sky. This explosion released energy estimated to be between 10 to 15 megatons of TNT. That's about 1,000 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. And it flattened over 2,000 square kilometers of dense Siberian forest, toppling around 80 million trees like they were toothpicks. Now here's the crazy part. There were no confirmed deaths, and no one actually saw anything crash into the ground. The place was so remote, it took scientists nearly 2 decades just to get there and start investigating. And what they found only deepened the mystery. So what was it? A meteor? A comet? A secret weapon? Or something not of this world? In this video, we'll dive into the moment the event happened, what witnesses saw, the bizarre scientific clues that followed, and the wild theories that still keep people guessing. From solid science to strange speculation, the Tunguska Event is one mystery that refuses to be solved. And it all began on a calm morning in the wilderness of Siberia. The date was June 30th, 1908, a typical summer morning in the remote Siberian wilderness, near the Tunguska River. The sun had just started to rise when something extraordinary tore across the sky. At around 7:17 a.m. local time, the calm was shattered. People living in nearby regions, some over 40 miles away, looked up to see what many described as a fireball or a blazing blue-white streak moving rapidly across the sky. It was followed by a massive flash of light, brighter than the sun. Then came the shockwave. Huts rattled, windows shattered, people were thrown off their feet. Horses bolted in panic. One witness, sitting on his porch about 60 kilometers away, recalled being blown clear out of his chair as the ground trembled beneath him. Another said it felt like the earth itself had flipped. The Evenki people, an indigenous group living in the area, were among the closest witnesses. They spoke of a terrible roaring sound, a wave of intense heat, and winds so strong they tore trees out by the roots. Many believed it was the wrath of the gods. But when the dust settled, nothing visible had fallen from the sky. The blast had flattened an area of about 2,000 square kilometers. That's roughly the size of a large metropolitan city. Over 80 million trees were blown down in a strange radial pattern, as if something had exploded directly above them, pushing everything outward from the center. Some trees near the epicenter were stripped of their branches but remained standing, almost like telephone poles scorched from above. It was devastation on an enormous scale, yet incredibly not a single confirmed human life was lost. The closest populated settlements were just far enough away to avoid the worst. But here's the thing, no one knew what caused it. There was no visible impact crater, no chunks of rock from space, no immediate clue to explain the destruction. And because the area was so remote, with no roads, no infrastructure, and treacherous terrain, no scientific expedition could reach the blast site for nearly 20 years. So for years, the Tunguska region remained undisturbed, frozen in mystery. Word of the event spread slowly, mostly through scattered reports and rumors. Scientists were curious, sure, but Russia was going through war, revolution, and upheaval. The Tunguska mystery would have to wait. And when researchers finally did make it there, what they found only deepened the puzzle. Let's now step into the wild world of early expeditions, delayed investigations, and one man who dedicated his life to uncovering the truth and came back with more questions than answers. Leonid Kulik, a Russian mineralogist and scientist who became fascinated, almost obsessed, with the mysterious Siberian explosion. In 1921, he stumbled across old reports of the event while researching meteorites in archives. The more he read, the stranger the story got. By 1927, Kulik finally got permission and funding to lead the first scientific expedition to Tunguska. It wasn't an easy trip. Siberia is brutal terrain, even in summer. Kulik's team battled swamps, mosquitoes, illness, and bitter cold. It took weeks just to reach the site, which lay deep in the taiga, one of the most inaccessible parts of Russia. But once they arrived, what they saw left them speechless. The forest was still flattened, more than 19 years later. Trees lay in neat patterns, all pointing away from a central spot, as if something had exploded above them. The scale of destruction was still staggering. Kulik expected to find a crater. After all, if this had been a meteorite, and that was his working theory, it should have slammed into the ground and left a massive hole. But there was nothing. No crater, no meteorite fragments, no burnt-out husk of a space rock. He searched for days, then weeks, convinced the object had buried itself underground. But digging produced no results. No chunks of metal, no space debris, nothing at all. What he did find, however, were fascinating clues. At the very center of the blast zone, some trees remained standing, scorched and branchless, but upright. It was as if the explosion had happened above them, sending the shockwave outward in all directions. He also took photographs of the area and documented the strange radial treefall pattern, a circular destruction zone with trees all flattened away from the center, like ripples from a rock thrown in water. The lack of a crater and the absence of any solid impact material left scientists puzzled. If this wasn't a meteorite, then what was it? If something exploded in the air, what kind of object does that? Kulik returned to Tunguska multiple times, each time trying to uncover more evidence, but the mystery only seemed to grow deeper. Some locals even whispered that it wasn't a meteor at all, but a curse or a weapon or something from the heavens. The scientific world was left with nothing concrete, just flattened forest, survivor stories, and a growing stack of questions. So what do you do when you're faced with the impossible? You start forming theories, and that's exactly what happened next. Over the decades, scientists and a few less than scientific thinkers started proposing their own explanations. Some made sense, others, well, let's just say they were a little more out there. Let's break down the most compelling and most curious scientific theories ever proposed to explain that mysterious Siberian explosion. 1. Airburst of a meteoroid or comet, the leading theory. This is the front-runner, the theory most scientists agree on today. According to this idea, a space rock, likely a stony meteorite or icy comet, came hurtling through Earth's atmosphere. But instead of hitting the ground, it exploded mid-air, around 5 to 10 kilometers, 3 to 6 miles, above the surface. That explosion would have created a powerful shockwave, flattening everything below, which perfectly matches what we see in Tunguska. And there's a modern comparison, Chelyabinsk, 2013. A much smaller meteoroid exploded in the atmosphere over Russia, injuring over 1,000 people with flying glass and debris. It didn't leave a crater, either just a bright flash, a boom, and a reminder that space is not always friendly. Scientists say Tunguska was basically Chelyabinsk on steroids, bigger, louder, and more remote. But why didn't we find any debris? That brings us to theory number 2. 2. Fragment of a comet. Ice that vanished without a trace. Some believe the object wasn't a rock at all, but a fragment of a comet, made mostly of ice and dust. When it entered Earth's atmosphere, the intense heat and pressure vaporized it entirely, leaving no solid pieces behind. That would explain why Kulik and his team couldn't find anything. Comets also contain volatile chemicals like carbon monoxide and methane, which when heated could explode in mid-air with tremendous force. And since comets originate from the icy edges of the solar system, this theory fits with the lack of crater and the minimal leftover material. Still, some scientists argue it's hard to explain such a powerful explosion without at least a little solid residue, which opens the door for more exotic ideas. This one's definitely more speculative, but also kind of cool or terrifying depending on how you look at it. What if a tiny black hole, possibly a leftover from the early universe, passed straight through Earth? According to this theory, The black hole entered the atmosphere, caused a massive release of energy, and then exited out the other side of the planet without leaving a trace. Sounds like science fiction, right? Well, it mostly is. There's no evidence of seismic activity on the other side of Earth that would confirm an exit point, and no leftover radiation or gravitational anomalies have ever been detected in the area. It's a creative idea, but it doesn't hold up to scientific scrutiny. Another wildcard theory is that the Tunguska Event was caused by a chunk of antimatter colliding with regular matter in Earth's atmosphere. Antimatter and matter annihilate each other on contact, releasing huge amounts of energy. So yes, this could have caused a massive explosion in theory, but in reality, there's a catch. An antimatter explosion would have left distinct radioactive signatures, and scientists found none. Plus, where would the antimatter have come from? We've never observed natural antimatter chunks flying through space. Again, fascinating, but unlikely. Now here's where things take a sharp turn into conspiracy land. Some claim the explosion was the result of an experiment by the legendary inventor Nikola Tesla. According to the theory, Tesla was testing a powerful energy weapon, often dubbed the Death Ray, from his Wardenclyffe Tower in New York. The theory goes that Tesla targeted a remote part of the Earth to demonstrate his invention, and Tunguska just happened to be in the crosshairs. It's a fun idea, especially for sci-fi lovers, but there's zero solid evidence. Tesla never claimed responsibility, and there's no documentation linking his experiments to the explosion. Not to mention, the tower wasn't even operational by that time. This one falls firmly under the category of pseudoscience. So, what holds up today? After over a century of theories, debates, and research, the strongest explanation still points to a stony meteoroid, around 50 to 60 meters wide, that exploded mid-air before reaching the ground. Modern computer models support this. So do simulations of the blast's angle, speed, and energy. It lines up with eyewitness accounts, the tree patterns, and the lack of an impact crater. While we may never find the exact object that caused it, science has built a strong case. But the Tunguska event didn't just spark scientific curiosity, it also lit up the imaginations of conspiracy theorists, UFO hunters, and paranormal believers.
Let's take a detour into the strangest and most out-there explanations people have come up with over the years. One of the most popular fringe ideas is that an alien spacecraft exploded or crashed over Siberia. Supporters of this theory point to the radial tree fall pattern and the precise nature of the blast as evidence of something intelligently controlled. Some even suggest it was an emergency detonation of a damaged alien ship to avoid hitting a populated area. Interesting? Sure. But again, no spacecraft debris, no alien tech, and nothing beyond speculation. Still, that hasn't stopped this idea from thriving in books, late-night talk shows, and documentaries. Another twist on the alien angle? That the Tunguska explosion was the result of an extraterrestrial weapon test. According to this theory, Earth was used as a target range for a powerful energy weapon from beyond our planet. The symmetry of the destruction, the mid-air detonation, it all gets lumped into this wild theory. Of course, there's no actual proof. No signatures, no signals, no evidence at all. Just a big unanswered question, which seems to be the real fuel behind most of these ideas. Some say the truth is known, but has been hidden by governments, either because it involves top-secret technology or contact with something the public isn't ready for. Sound familiar? Like many unexplained events, the lack of concrete answers is the perfect breeding ground for conspiracy theories. People don't like blanks in the story, so they fill them in. And the Tunguska event, with its scale, mystery, and remoteness, is perfect conspiracy material. But as entertaining as these ideas are, none have ever been backed by real scientific data. And that's why scientists kept searching for grounded, testable answers. Which brings us to the present day, with satellites, computers, and better tools than ever before. So what have modern researchers discovered? Let's find out. In recent years, modern technology has breathed new life into the investigation and brought us closer than ever to understanding what really happened. Thanks to tools like satellite imaging, computer simulations, and soil and tree ring analysis, scientists have been able to piece together the event in ways that Leonid Kulik could only dream of. Satellite images and tree ring clues. Satellites have given us a bird's-eye view of the blast zone, revealing the full scale of the destruction and the near-perfect butterfly-shaped pattern of the flattened forest. This pattern has helped researchers better estimate the trajectory and angle of the object that exploded. Meanwhile, tree ring studies, yes, the actual growth rings in surviving trees, have provided surprising insights. Some trees at the edges of the blast zone suddenly grew faster in the years following the explosion. Scientists believe this is because sunlight was no longer blocked by surrounding trees, giving them more energy to grow.
It's a small detail, but it supports the timeline and environmental impact of the event. Researchers have also taken soil samples from the region, looking for rare elements or unusual particles. Some findings include tiny spheres of silicate and magnetite, which could be remnants of a vaporized space rock, supporting the airburst theory. Even in ice cores taken from Greenland and Antarctica, scientists have found traces of atmospheric changes that line up with the Tunguska explosion. That means the blast was powerful enough to impact Earth's atmosphere globally. Computer modeling has probably been the biggest game changer. By plugging in data like blast radius, shockwave patterns, and eyewitness accounts, scientists have recreated the event digitally, and the results are striking. Most models point to a stony meteoroid, traveling at around 27,000 kilometers per hour, entering Earth's atmosphere at a shallow angle, and exploding at about 8 to 10 kilometers above the surface. This explains the lack of crater, the radial tree pattern, the airburst, and even the absence of debris because much of it would have burned up in the atmosphere. Still no smoking gun, but a strong case. So, has the mystery been solved? Not entirely. There's still no physical fragment recovered. No definitive "this is it" moment. But with all the data gathered over the last few decades, there's now a strong scientific consensus. The Tunguska event was almost certainly caused by a medium-sized meteoroid or comet fragment that exploded mid-air, an incredibly rare, high-energy natural event. It may not be as dramatic as aliens or death rays, but the real story is no less impressive, a reminder that space can and does throw curveballs at Earth. And that brings us to something even bigger, why this event still matters. Let's look at its legacy and why scientists are still talking about Tunguska more than a century later. More than 100 years later, the Tunguska event still casts a long shadow not just across Siberia, but across science, pop culture, and even global policy. Let's start with the fun stuff. The Tunguska mystery has inspired countless books, documentaries, video games, and movies. You'll find references to it in everything from The X-Files to Call of Duty to Indiana Jones. Writers and filmmakers love it because it's the perfect plot device, a real unexplained explosion in the middle of nowhere. Add some aliens, a secret weapon, or a lost civilization, and boom, instant mystery thriller. Even outside of sci-fi, the story has become part of pop culture's fascination with unsolved phenomena, and honestly, it's no wonder. The facts alone are wild enough, but it's not all fiction. The Tunguska event has had a serious impact on how we think about space and our planet's vulnerability. Before Tunguska, people didn't really worry much about space rocks hitting Earth. But this event proved that even a medium-sized object, if it explodes in the atmosphere, can cause city-level destruction. Now imagine if that object had come in a little faster or exploded over a populated area, we'd be telling a very different story. That's why Tunguska is often seen as the wake-up call that humanity didn't fully hear until much later. Today it's used as a case study for what could happen if we're not paying attention. In response to threats like this, scientists now track thousands of NEOs, near-Earth objects, using telescopes, satellites, and space missions. Agencies like NASA and ESA have entire departments dedicated to planetary defense. Tunguska plays a big part in that conversation, not just as a warning from the past, but as a motivation to be better prepared for the future. In fact, the event is now commemorated every year on June 30 as Asteroid Day, a global initiative to raise awareness about asteroid risks and promote science-based solutions. So yes, the world may have moved on from 1908, but Tunguska still matters. And now, let's bring it all home, because while science has come a long way, some mysteries still remain, and that's part of what makes Tunguska so unforgettable. So what really happened on that quiet summer morning in Siberia? All we know for sure is this. On June 30th, 1908, something exploded in the sky above the Tunguska River with a force powerful enough to flatten millions of trees, shake buildings several miles away, and light up the sky halfway across the globe. But when people arrived at the site, there was no crater, no meteorite, and no solid evidence of what had caused it. Over the years, scientists, explorers, and dreamers have tried to crack the case, and we've come a long way. Today, the most widely accepted theory is that a medium-sized stony meteoroid or comet fragment exploded in mid-air, releasing several megatons of energy. That's powerful enough to wipe out a major city. And yet there's still something haunting about Tunguska. Maybe it's the fact that the event came out of nowhere with no warning. Maybe it's the eerie absence of physical remains. Or maybe it's because, even after a century of research, there's no definitive object to point to and say, that's what caused it. The Tunguska Event sits at the edge of certainty, a place where science, mystery, and imagination overlap. And perhaps that's why it continues to fascinate us, because sometimes nature reminds us that not all power leaves a mark. Some of the most incredible forces in the universe don't come with easy answers, just questions that echo through time. So the next time you look up at the night sky, remember, sometimes the most powerful events leave no trace, only questions. So what do you think? Which theory makes the most sense to you? Share your thoughts in the comments.